So we're on the third video, and the last time we got our cordon all sewed down after transferring our drawing onto the fabric. And we just did that with a chalk pencil, and a kind of a freehand style, helped a little bit by a template for the petals which we cut around, and an egg cup. But before we move on today to starting to do some stitches into this piece, I just want to mention other ways of transferring designs, because when you're finished doing this, you might get the idea that you want to do your own designs, and there's absolutely nothing to stop you. You can freehand sketch them out like this, but if you end up with something a little bit, say, more complicated than what we're starting with today, there are techniques which make it easier to transfer, and one of the techniques is doing the thing out on paper the way this one is done on a grid here. It's actually on a piece of paper underneath this piece of plastic. Now that's a simple design, but at the same time difficult in that it's all straight lines intersecting at right angles. But you could draw your design out on a piece of ordinary copy paper, and if you have like a prototype on an ordinary piece of paper here, I'm saying copy paper or print paper just because it's thin. What you could do is trace it, get some tracing paper and just trace your design, and then transfer it onto another piece of paper, which is going to be the piece of paper stuck to your fabric, and it's going to stay stuck the way this piece is stuck onto the fabric. And what I'm sticking it with is stuff called contact paper. Now, traditionally in the style of lace making I do, you use this kind of matte, bluey, greeny contact paper, but it's fairly expensive, so I don't usually use that. I usually use the ordinary kind of a thin, glossy contact paper, and I find it fine. And then for the background paper here, I've used a colour that's easy on the eyes. So not the traditional green, because I just didn't have that colour at the time, but a piece of paper that's a scrapbook piece of paper, in a nice soft brown that the white shows up easily against, but that doesn't kind of hurt my eyes. If you were using a black and white, you can get this kind of strobe effect that's pretty unpleasant. And the way you would transfer from this piece of paper, if you've drawn your design out on the tracing paper, onto that piece of paper you're going to stick on your fabric, is to get an old pen or something and go over the design, push the design through it. And because this scrapbook paper is relatively soft paper, the line of the design comes out and you can draw over it in an indelible ink. I used a black ink, and then I was able to put down my cordon, sewing straight through the contact paper. Here's what the contact paper looks like when it's still attached to its little, you buy it in sheets or rolls, and then this backing peels off, you see, when you're ready to stick your design down. So I just wanted to point that out for your future designs. All right, so our sewing today is going to consist of doing this left petal here. And if I zoom in a bit, you can see that you might be able to recognize the stitch from what we did on the sampler. This is a cord stitch done fairly tightly, but it's a bit different because it's got some holes in it. They look kind of a roundy shape here, but the name of the pattern is a diamond. And I'll show you how that diamond is done as we work the cord stitch. And we have another few new tricks for this piece as well, because we might as well keep learning new stitches as we go along. But I'll show you this one first. I'm going to get the pen out to explain something here. Do you remember that cord stitch was all Brussels stitch going to the right? And then on the way back, so that's the row heading to the right, the rows going to the left, you ran a cord across, didn't you? So you did that for every single row. So as we go along, we're going to be sticking to that, but we're going to be doing an extra thing into that. And the extra thing is that when we come back this way and work into the cord into our stitch, when we come back to do the cord, in order to make the first hole, we're going to be whipping, stitching over 3 in the middle. And that'll be the start of the first hole, because then we're going to need a loop and be able to work into the loop to make that hole. And of course, we're going to have to keep the pattern going while we're doing that. So the pattern consists of doing Brussels stitch to the right and running a cord across to the left. So it's about remembering where the holes go. And the holes consist of, for the top one, 3 stitches, for this one, 4, for this one, 4, then it's 4 again, 4 again, and 3. So that's basically what we're going to be doing. I have my first line of Brussels stitch done now, and I'm just getting ready to go across, bring the cord across for the next row. But as you can see, we're working on a curve now. So a little trick you can do when you're working on the curve, to make sure you keep 45-degree angle on things and figure out where your rows start and end, is to just hold your thread across like that. And you can see if you have an angle that you like, and it helps keep the same angle all the way down. So for example, on the next line, I haven't run the cord across yet, but then when I come down a bit from that, I know that I'm going to want my row to start about here, which involves putting in a new stitch because I'm working on a curve. I won't have to put in a new stitch here, and in fact this side is coming in, so I'll be sort of possibly decreasing my stitches as I will on the other side, but there's that little curve where it heads out a bit first. So, you know, depending on what shape your piece is, you'll notice you have to do that in a curve. So working on a curve is just another skill we're working on as well. That's one row complete now with the cord run across. So you're going to need at least 3 rows before you start putting the fancy pattern in, because we want the pattern to show up nicely in the petal. Okay, I'm going to whip stitch through, this is the cord row I'm on. So I'm drawing the cord across. I'm going to whip stitch through the middle 3 stitches without stitching the rest, because you're always bringing the cord across when you're working from right to left. But the 3 stitches in the middle I'm going to keep for my pattern, if I can find the next stitch. And you want to try and keep 4 stitches on either side of that. I know it's a challenge on a piece so small, but these are the kind of challenges that we deal with. If you can only get 3 stitches, that's okay. You can work with 3 stitch holes. But you're going to try and keep to either side of the 3 that you're going to whip through. You're going to try and keep 4 stitches on either side for the other 2 holes when you get to them. You're not doing them on this row, but I have the next row underway now, and I've just cord stitched with Brussels stitch as per usual until I get to the middle 3 stitches, and then I skip the 3 that I whipped and carry on to the opposite side, where I'm going to do the last stitches corded again. And here's how it looks at the end of that row. I now have the first little hole, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of swap the way I do things. I had whipped around before, I had whipped around the center stitches, but I'm going to make the side holes now. So I'm going to whip into 4 stitches here, and I'll show you what I do in the center. I have 3 of the 4 stitches for the top of the hole done now, whipped into, and I'm whipping into that last one. So it's not a loop, you're just going into the stitch and pulling. When I get to the loop for the outside of the top hole, I'm actually going to make another little loop, go over to the other side of it, and continue whipping across, because the double loop is going to give strength to be able to sew into in the next line. So you've got 2 little loops at the bottom of that now. I'll continue whipping the 4 stitches across. Obviously, if you had some stitches on either side of those 4, you would just run your cord across, and on a wider piece, you also just stitch the stitches outside the holes in a normal cord stitch. Okay, so that row that was going right to left was whipping 4 stitches, running a cord across the 3 in the middle for the second cord in the hole, and then whipping another 4 stitches, and then any stitches we had outside of that. I didn't happen to have any, but any stitches outside of that pattern you were just stitching in a normal cord stitch. So this time, left to right, we're coming back, and this is where we usually do a cord stitch, but we're actually making a loop and going into the central gap with grabbing those 2 cords in the center and making a Brussels stitch. And that gives us our little loop for one of the sides. And we're making 2 more Brussels stitches, so it's 3 Brussels stitches in the center to finish the first hole. 2 and 1 more. And then you can probably guess what's going to happen on the other side. I'm going to skip 4 and make a loop. And actually I've only got 4 at the side, so I'm coming all the way out to the side to tie it off. And this will give a nice little pattern, the top of our pattern. So the next row is going to be all about another cord, isn't it? I've brought the cord all the way across this time, and for this kind of halfway point row, I'm doing 4 Brussels stitches into the 2 loops of each gap. Then I'm going to come into the middle and I'm going to make 2 stitches into those 3 from the row above. Then I'm going to do 4 across to the other side. Okay, I'm on the part where the end of that row, and I'm bringing the cord stitch across, but instead of bringing it across, I'm whipping it, because I'm going to make another one of these holes. And remember, we whipped it across the top of the hole, so whip for 4 and then skip the center ones, and you have a little loop that you're going to work into as a cord on the way back. When you're going from right to left on the next row, you're going to work 3 stitches into that central area. So on the next row, you can see I have the first loop of 2 that I'm going to need for the second left hand side hole, and I'm just in the middle of doing my Brussels stitches into the central bit. There'll be 3 of those, and then loop across to the end of that row. So we're going to make our second cord run across for those side holes, and we're going to whip through those central stitches to make sort of the top of that middle hole. So we've got 3 stitches we're going to whip through in the middle, and then bring another loop across for our hole in the side. So just for you, as you did for the upper part of the design, you're going to go into that double loop there with 4 Brussels stitches. Then you're going to skip the middle to start making the hole, and then you're going to go in with 4 Brussels stitches to the right side. Now I have those 2 side holes done now, so I'm just running the cord across as I normally would, working right to left, and I'm making a little loop in the middle as well, because I need to finish that last hole, don't I? Which I will be finishing on the next one across. So I'm just going to finish running my thread. So that's our little diamond shape finished, and we just continue on in a normal cord stitch to the end of the petal. And there are all sorts of variations of that diamond that you can do, or you can do crosses. There's another thing you can do as well, because we're going to work this cord stitch in a few places, and in a few places here, for example in the stem, I worked this in a thinner thread. Let me see, can I get better focus for you there? So what I did for that, you would be ready, I think, to have a go maybe at doing that if you wanted to. The thread I had been using, and we had been using up to now, was a number 30. That middle bit is done in a number 80 thread, and it's a thinner thread. The higher the number, the thinner the thread. So you could try a thinner thread like a 50, or go up to an 80 if you want for one of the sections. And the stem is a good place to do that. So you can carry on and do the stem on your own in whichever thread you choose. It's nice in the 30 as well. And try your little, it's easier to do the patterns, you see, if you have a thinner thread, because the stem is going to be fairly thin. If your stem is too thin, don't worry, just do a plain cord stitch. And then this leaf over here, I think that's in the bigger, wider thread as well. This one is in the finer thread, and you can do it going that direction if you don't mind this increasing stitches thing, or you can just do it going straight across this way, whichever you're happier with. You don't even have to, sorry, I'm losing the focus, you don't even have to split the leaf in half. I put in an extra bit of thread and split the leaf in half just to see if it would look nice. I actually think it looks nicer as a full leaf rather than with this netting in it. So try doing your cord stitch for the central stem, the left leaf, and this leaf over here, whichever way you decide to do it, across or across this way. That's part of the artistry of making lace, deciding which directions to go with things and what patterns to put in or leave out. And you'll get plenty of practice at doing that little pattern on your cord stitch. And I'll see you next time, and we'll do some more stitches next time.